Hi, I'm Dustin Saldarriaga, an immigration lawyer with Scott Legal PC in New York City. And in this video, we're continuing our series on the E2 investor visa by focusing on the develop and direct requirement. In summary, this is the requirement that the E2 investor must be coming to the United States solely to develop and direct the E2 business, and they must be in a position to do so. This might seem like a straightforward requirement, but as you'll see in this video, it has a few details that are worth being aware of. Before we dive in, if you're interested in more information about the E2 visa requirements, we've posted to our YouTube channel our full webinar on the E2 visa, which we'll link to below. We also share a lot of free information about the E2 visa and other visas on our blog, which we'll also link to below. Finally, please remember that no video can replace the value of working directly with an immigration lawyer who can navigate the specific nuances of your application. So with that, let's get started. One of the key requirements for the E2 investor visa is that the E2 investor must be coming to the United States solely to develop and direct the operations of the E2 business. There are a few details about the requirement that are worth being aware of. The first is that the E2 investor must have control of the business through their ownership. This aspect of the develop and direct requirement is very similar to the ownership requirement, which we covered in a separate video. In summary, in order to show the government that you can develop and direct the business, you must show that you have control of the business by owning at least 50% of it. If the E2 investor's ownership of the company drops below 50%, they become ineligible for the visa. But ownership alone does not satisfy the develop and direct requirement. The investor must also show the government that they are qualified to develop and direct the business, meaning that they have the necessary skills and experience to make the business viable by generating revenue and hiring workers. As a result, in your application, you would want to highlight your past work experience and your educational background. Now, this is not to say that the E2 visa has an education requirement. It doesn't. You don't need a degree to get an E2 visa, but you must convince the government that you're qualified to make your business a success. So this is an opportunity in the application to be an advocate for yourself and to show how your background and your experience makes you a great person to run your company. There's a related characteristic of the develop and direct requirement, which is that the investor must be coming to the US solely to focus on developing the E2 business. The E2 investor is only authorized to work in the US for the E2 business, and they're not allowed to work for another business. Now, it's possible to define the E2 business broadly, which could allow the E2 investor to engage in a broader scope of work within the E2 company. For example, if you plan to pursue an E2 investor visa based on your ownership of a home cleaning company in the US, but you also want to be able to expand into landscaping work, you can define the E2 business broadly in your application to include both home cleaning and landscaping. The scope of the business that's approved by the consulate or USCIS is what defines the work activities you can engage in as an E2 investor. There's one last aspect of the develop and direct requirement that we'll discuss in this video, and it's especially important if you're applying for E2 status from within the United States through USCIS rather than through a consulate. USCIS, or U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, will frequently deny or issue a request for additional evidence when the E2 investor is providing direct services to customers rather than developing the business itself. To put it another way, an application could be denied by USCIS if the E2 investor appears to be competing in the labor market with U.S. workers. To understand this, it's helpful to look at an example. A Canadian citizen just received a degree in accounting from a U.S. university. They now want to start an accounting firm. So they're interested in applying for a change of status from student status to E2 investor status through USCIS. In order to reduce costs and get the accounting firm off the ground, the applicant plans to be the sole worker at the firm for the first year, acting as both an accountant to clients and as an entrepreneur building the firm. Once the firm gets traction by year 2, the applicant will begin hiring and expects to employ at least 3 employees by year 5. Now, this application would probably satisfy the develop and direct requirement if it were submitted to a consulate. But if it were submitted to USCIS, it could raise concerns and risk a denial. Here's why. USCIS makes a distinction between developing and directing a business and providing direct services to clients. In the view of USCIS, an E2 investor should not compete with US workers. By definition, a business owner or entrepreneur does not compete in the labor market. By owning and developing an accounting firm, for example, our Canadian investor is not taking that opportunity away from anyone in the US. They can go out and start their own firm. However, if our Canadian investor is spending most of her time providing accounting services to clients, she is competing with US workers because in the perspective of USCIS, there are other accountants who would like to serve those clients. So how can we address this in our example? One solution is for our Canadian investor to hire a US worker earlier in the process, say early in year 1, in order to show that it's the US worker and not the Canadian applicant who will be providing accounting services to clients. This allows the Canadian applicant to show in her application that her primary role will not be to provide direct services to clients, but instead will be to grow the business through marketing efforts, hiring workers, supervising work, building partnerships in the professional community, and taking other steps that are more aligned with what a business owner would typically do. In other words, hiring a US worker earlier allows the Canadian applicant to show that her primary role is to develop and direct the business. Again, this is not usually an issue at consulates. However, if you're applying through USCIS, be mindful of this risk and take extra steps to make it clear that your primary role will be to build the business and not to serve clients directly. We hope this video about the E2 visa's develop and direct requirement was helpful. If it was, please click the like and subscribe buttons below to stay updated on future videos about visa options and travel to the US. Thank you for watching.